Today we're talking about interactive storytelling using Octane. My name is Mark. I work at Trifoya. We're an e-learning company, and we use Octane in some interesting ways to help. Um, Hold on a second. Trying to get to my next page here. Well, hold on. Sorry, having a little. Okay, now it's on the right page. So today we're talking about some technologies that are might be new to you because they're not something that you would use every day doing Blazor development. One of them is a technology called Ink, and Ink is I'll dig into each one of these as we go. So Ink is for interactive storytelling. It's mostly used in games, but because Blazor is written in C sharp, we get to use a lot of libraries that are produced for games, and so we'll see some of that. Lottie files are a animation that's used in on mobile, and it's also used on the web. And we'll show how to add that to your uh, Octane modules. Along the way, we'll embed a web component. I'll show some ways to access other code libraries. And then the main thing I wanted to talk about was how modules can communicate with each other, sending messages to each other and create a really dynamic experience for your users on a single page. And then we'll wrap it up and have some questions. So, first of all, let's talk about ink and interactive fiction in general. If you visit, uh, hold on just a second, gotta make sure I've got the right browser up here. All right. So if you go take a look at Inkle Studios, you'll see that they are a producer of award-winning games. Highland Song, Overboard. These are all games that you may have played, and the common theme between these is that it's all about interactive storytelling. There's problems to solve, choices to make, and the decisions that you make change the outcome of what's happening. If you keep scrolling down through all this, you'll see that not only do they create games, but they also create a thing called Ink, which is an open source scripting language that other people can use to build interactive stories as well. And this is the technology that we will be using uh, along the way to to use some of these to create some of these rich experiences. In the e-learning space, there's been a big push lately towards gamification. And if you've used a product like Duolingo, you'll know that it's a very game-like environment. And they're kind of tricking you into learning by having some of these game-like experiences. And so at Trifoya, we build experiences as well. This renders best on a mobile phone, but I just wanted to show this live site in action. The basic composition is the top half of the screen is something interesting to look at, and the bottom half of the screen is the interactive text adventure. When I think of interactive fiction, you can also think of choose your own adventure. Choose your own adventure books go all the way back. There's 50 years of choose your own adventure stuff or a text-based game where here's the situation, and then what do you do when you click on the option? Something changes here, and then you can make different choices. And some of the choices that I'm making on the bottom are changing what's happening on the top. And this is the basic gist of what we're going to be talking about today. So uh, let me take a little bit deeper look at what's going on with ink. And one way to do that is to you can talk to AI. AI happens to be really great at generating ink scripts. So if you say generate an ink script for a simple interactive fiction story about two roads in a wood, it's going to start immediately generating a bunch of really kind of benign storytelling. But the interesting thing is it knows how to do ink. And so this is where things start. These are, if you know ink, you know that that's a choice. And then this is where the choice is going to take you. And then you can kind of read through this as if it's a markup language like any other markup language. And this is the story, and this is the way the story uh, plays out. So now that we understand a little bit about um, ink, let's move on to the next one, and which is the Lottie animations. So Lottie animations, if you go ahead and take a look at their website, uh, this is, and the animation probably isn't going to come through smoothly on the stream, but these are like buttery smooth animations, and they're really engaging. The great thing about the Lottie files environment is you can search for things, search for the animations for anything you want. Like if you want to look for things that look like they were in the woods, you can go and you can see all this art that exists in the world. And you can also find artists that are doing the art. And so one of the things we do is we'll find a particular style that appeals to us, and then we'll go ahead, we'll get a hold of the artists, and we'll engage with them to build custom stuff for us. Because I'm logged in here, I can go and I can look at my own collections of things that I've put together. And I've made a project for the Trailblazer event, and it's got a handful of animations that I think are going to go along with our story pretty well. And inside here, I can I can click on one of these animations. Like here's a woods, and you can see the sun rises. Over here on the right hand side of the screen, there's a way to they host all of these assets for you. You can end up taking we will end up taking them and hosting them ourselves, but along the way when you're developing, you can just go grab this URL, and it'll be in the right and then you can plug it in to the Lottie animation that we'll get to uh, building that up in a minute. So yeah, let's take a look at their player. So they include players for all sorts of situations. So there's a player for iOS, there's a player for Android, there's a player for um, some popular JavaScript uh, platforms. You'll notice Blazor's not on the list, and that's okay because we can use the web component one or we can use the web JavaScript library. But if you look at the web components, and this is a recurring theme if you're a Blazor developer, you'll get into one of these really cool packages, and then all of a sudden it's all about npm install. And you're like, oh, but I'm not doing Node. What does that mean for me? Well, luckily there's also this the you can just install this stuff on a CDN as well. So go find the CDN way of installing. And web components is it's kind of like a Blazor component, but it's an open web standard that is just it's like a no vendor web standard. It's just a web standard like HTTP or other web standards, and it's a way to bundle up and use components on the web. And because Blazor is just another way of doing the web, we can easily reference stuff like this in the work that we do as well. So now that you know quite a bit about Lottie files, or at least the backstory of Lottie files and ink, I'm gonna get into Visual Studio now, and we'll take a look at how we're gonna implement uh, this one. I've gone ahead and I've done the initial work. We just saw in the previous presentation how you make modules. I've taken some modules and then I've simplified them a bit. I've got a module and all I have is the client for the ink, client and the packager for the ink. I've got the client for the Lottie and the packager for the Lottie. I kind of don't need the server and the shared. Those projects are more for if I was moving data around or having an enterprise application, but I'm just kind of working on the client. And so I've simplified this. It also makes it easier to work with in the demo. So let's take a look at, I've stubbed these things out. And if I, oh, sorry, let me close this. Accidentally got a Slack message there. Let's go ahead and see what these things look like. I've just stubbed them out. All that these are is some um, very basic Bootstrap. Bootstrap is the default framework or default UI framework that you get with Blazor. I mean with Octane. So I'm just using that, and I'm just gonna just center a piece of text on the screen. Right now, it's just some words. Uh, I'm getting it from settings. One of the most compelling pieces of Octane modules is that they can have the page that renders, but there's also a settings page. And we'll see that in a second, where the user, as they're composing a page in Octane using the editor tools, you can adjust settings. And that makes it very powerful because now you're building modules that are low code, no code solutions. So right now, the setting I'm getting is a setting called Lottie, and its default value is Lottie goes here. So if I run this thing, let's build the solution. And now if I run it, here comes Octane. I've already gone through the startup. I'm logged in as the host, and I'm just using my page as the place that has um, these two modules hanging out. If I hit this little edit pencil in the upper right corner, it puts me into edit mode. I think we saw this in the previous presentation. And from here, you can go in and you can manage the settings. My module setting, I've got a setting, and what I can do is I can dump in that URL that was I pulled off of the Lottie Files website, and there it is. I'm going to save it here. If I get out of the pencil, I mean, obviously it's just rendering that on the screen, but you can see the settings let you do quite a bit, or it helps you build modules that can be have that low code nature. Strings are fine, but we actually want to put a Lottie in here, and so we need to go grab that code. Pardon me while I'm on the other screen here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to replace this H3 element with the .lottie. And instead, I'm going to go ahead and put the Lottie in there. And so that's kind of all you need in the markup. But when we were looking at when we were looking at the developer page for Lottie files, we also need to register this script. Well, we I, the Octane way of registering a script doesn't really have much to do with putting it in the HTML. And we don't really have access to like the root page of the web. This index page is the index for the module. It's not the index for the whole web. So where do you put these things? There's a couple places to put it. My favorite is to put it in the module info itself. This is kind of like the metadata definition uh, for the for the app, and for the module. And one of the things that you can put in there is you can declare the resources that you need. So the resource that I need is the Lottie web component, and I've spelled component wrong, is the Lottie web component. And then there's certain parameters that I'm going to use. Of course, you have the URL. That's great. It's a resource type of script. And then I'm going to say that it's a ES6 module. And then I'm going to just put it in the body. And because that lines up best with what I'm seeing here. I see that if I inspect the docs here, it's like it's a script, it's of type module, that's the source, and it's inside the body tag. So with my deep understanding of Octane, I end up with this string here. And what this is going to do is when the page is dynamically put together, it's going to make sure that all the resources I need are in place. And so when that uh, Lottie file web component goes to render, it should just kind of work. So if I go to my page, I see the Lottie, and sure enough, there it is. It's an animation of this sun rising in the woods. So now we've kind of got half of our puzzle figured out here. Now we can play Lotties on the screen. The next thing we want to do is start working on the ink module. So let's get, okay, so the ink, let's take another look at ink. Uh, if you go back to Inkle Ink, you'll notice that they also have all of these different things that they support. Here you can download an editor. There's the ink language. Here's some stuff for Unity and Unreal. And then there's the open source stuff. And we want to go take a look at ink itself, ink the open source package. Here it is. This is what they use to build their experiences. And you can see that there was a release that happened this year that looks like it went along with their Highland game that came out. And a lot of times in .NET development, the place that you would go look for things to pull into your code would be a NuGet package. And that kind of assumes that people they want to publish the NuGet package, they're going to maintain the NuGet package, and they're going to make it easy for you to succeed to use it. That's not always the case, especially if I'm digging around in the games universe and I'm looking for things that I can use in my C# and Blazor. It's not guaranteed that there's going to be a NuGet package. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this repo into my project. And the way that I'm going to do that is with a submodule. A submodule doesn't have anything to do with Blazor or Octane. A submodule is it's a Git thing. And let me go look. I've got a file that's up here right now. My current Git modules looks like this. And this is I'm using a submodule to pull in the Octane framework. It's going to pull it into a directory underneath the root, or it's going to pull it into a directory at the root of my Git repo called Octane Framework. It's going to pull this repository. It's going to make sure I'm on that branch, and then we're just going to ignore any changes that happen. I want to add a second submodule to my project, and that's going to be the ink submodule. And this is same kind of thing. I'm going to call it ink. Its path is going to be ink. I'm going to go call the ink repo, call the master branch, and ignore any changes in it because we don't want any changes. We don't want to be trying to check into other people's libraries and stuff like that. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to open my path in Solution Explorer. It's going to give me the root of my project, and I have a Git modules in here. Pardon me while it launches all sorts of things. Looks like I've got my Git modules mapped to VS Code. There you go. I'm just going to save this thing. And then off screen, I can do some demo magic, and I'm going to initialize the submodule. What that's going to do is it's going to go get that. It's going to clone that repo, and it's going to make it available to me. And then I'm going to add a couple of projects from the ink into my own project. So I'm going to add an existing project. I'm going to go into my Trailblazer. Yeah, there's the ink. And I can see I have a compiler and I have a runtime. And I need both of these. I need the compiler. Whoa, hey now. Isn't there supposed to be a project file? Add existing project. Yeah. This is called Trailblazer Ink Lottie. Ink. Ah, I'm supposed to be seeing a project file here. Hold on a second. It worked in rehearsal. Give me just a second. Pardon me while I'm on the other screen here. I think I've got a way around this. Give me just let me try that again. Existing project. Oh, hey, there's more stuff here. I need the compiler. Let me add another one. Ink Engine Runtime is the other one that I need. Oh, hello. And now in my ink client, I'm going to want to reference these guys. So let's do add a project reference to the compiler and the runtime. Yeah. And now inside my module, again, I've just got the stubbed out module, and the prompt is just coming from inside the settings, nothing special going on here. And what I would like to do is reference those new projects that I pulled in. Got to pull in those namespaces. So up at the top, I'm going to grab a couple of these. I got the runtime. I got a thing called runtime, and I got a thing called ink, and I'm getting those. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit more work when I get my stuff out of settings. Here I go get my prompt. Right now I'm just getting a prompt and it's just text. I'm going to have to do more work. One of the things I'm going to have to do is I'm going to get a variable. I'm going to get this. I'm going to replace this pure text here with the ink that we've seen in the in the examples. The big blob of markup is going to go into the settings. And then the first thing I need to do is compile it, because it compiles into like an object. And then when I and then when I compile the story, the next thing I want to do is it's the concept of continuing. I got this prompt. And let me grab that continue code real quick. Continuing is an ink concept, which is basically like keep telling the story. So we're gonna looks like I need a local story to take care of that too. I have a prompt, I have a story. Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm compiling the ink into a story. And then what I'm going to do is if the story can continue, I've got a story. If the story can continue, then grab the prompt from the story continue. I know it's a little we're in Inkland, so this is going to look it's going to read a little bit funny. But that's kind of what we got going on here. I think this is going to give us what we need to put some words on the page. H3 feels like it's going to be kind of big. So, all right, let's try this. Okay, it still says ink goes here because I haven't changed the settings yet. And if you pass text through the ink compiler, it gives you text on the other side. So let's go ahead and update our story here. We're going to go into our ink settings. Sometimes the page needs to be scrolled a little bit so you can get to the settings. And in my module settings, I have a big blob here that says this is where it's expecting to do the work. I've got a story. just happen to have this story ready to go. We could say it was the one that was generated by the AI. And if I save this thing and I take myself out of edit mode, oh, look, you find yourself at a crossroads in a dense forest. The path splits between two directions. That's great. So we've got the words, we've got the animation going on. It's starting to feel like a game, but there's something missing. I can't make any choices. And so let's expand on this a little bit and add some choices. So underneath my prompt, I'm going to add a little loop. And in that loop, I'm going to make some buttons. And the story has a list of current choices, conveniently enough. And then I can go ahead and just put the choice text in a button. And I'm not getting fancy with my buttons. I'm just doing buttons. It's going to be a little ugly. And then I can do something when it clicks. When I click the button, I can I can go ahead and I'm just gonna tell the story. It's time to do its thing. So the story has a list of current choices. I'm gonna pass in the index. I'm going to choose the choice by the index. I'm gonna continue the story. And then it's usually not a bad idea to do this. I might not need it, but I'm just gonna do it anyway. Let's give it another shot. See if we've got some choices to make. Oh, sorry, that was just a build. See, the inner loop in Octane is something that you got to get used to. There's lots of rebuilding, and there's lots of launching of things because of its modular component nature. You always have to be deploying a lot. Anyway, so here I am. I'm on my page. I've got my story going, and now I have these two choices. This is great. So I can take the left path, and my words change here. Now I can either sit by the lake or I can continue to walk along the path. Let's sit by the lake. I sit by the lake. Everything's awesome. That's the end of my story. Pretty cool. So that part's working. It's looking a little funny to have the titles of these modules over here. That's easy to change. Let me just go into edit for a second. That's a container setting. You can just say no. I don't want to see that. Same kind of thing. Manage settings, container setting. No. You see how it still says Lottie and ink? That's because in my code, uh, I put that in there if we're in edit mode. Oh, look, it looks more like a game now. This is nice. And we'll work on getting this this these animations swapping out next. Just a slight little. I just wanted to talk about Octane for a second here. Um, at the beginning of my Razor page, this is my index Razor Razor component. I like to check and see if I'm in edit mode. And if I am, instead of doing all the work of the actual what it's supposed to do, I usually just put the name of the title here. And because all of the modules inherit from module base, you get this rich collection of all sorts of things that are available to you. And one of them is module state. The other one is page state. And we'll notice in a little bit we have a thing called site state as well. So, we saw a lot of presentations that were about all the great the different rendering paths that you can take with Blazor and all the cool things you can do to maintain state. One of the great things about Octane is it's doing some of that hard work for you. It's actually doing all the hard work of maintaining state for you, and you can rely on these page states, module states, and site states to be there for you uh, when you need them. Meanwhile, back in our story, I'm going to call this ink module done. It seems to be doing everything it's supposed to do. But one thing we would like to do is we would like to um, communicate with the Lottie module and tell it what to do. Pardon me, I've got too many windows open. I'm trying to get back to, yeah, here we go. So let's talk about intermodule communication for a bit. So both of these modules live on the same page, but they have no knowledge of each other. There's no like page object to get to or a query to do to say, hey, what's another module? They're self-contained. They don't really understand where they are on the page, and that's by design. And so um, the way that these can talk to each other is by using a piece of a very fundamental piece of .NET in the component model is a thing called INotifyPropertyChanged. Anytime you've got an object, if you want to look at that object and be notified by an event being fired that a property of that object has changed, if that uh, object implements INotifyPropertyChanged, and a ton of them do. This is the very basic part of the .NET framework. Then you can hook into an event, and it's going to tell you uh, every time that that happens. So in our case, what we want is we want the ink module to make a change to a property, and then we want the Lottie module to be listening for that change. So it's kind of like pub sub, but not really. But we'll call it that for we'll call it publish and subscriber just for the sake of the demo. So I'm going to do a thing here where I want to change my Lottie. So so every time we click a choice after the story changes, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look. And luckily for us, ink has a wonderful mechanism built in for extending it. So here's your ink. This is if I take the left path, it's going to take me here. And then here's the words that come. And notice this hashtag here. This is tags. In this area, I can do anything I want. I can put any number of hashtags I want in there. I can do some stuff. And so here I'm inventing a hashtag called Lottie. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the useful piece of the URL in there. So for the left path, we're going to call this Lottie that's in my collection. For the right path, we'll do this one. And you can see that I've decorated each one of these each one of these chapters of the story with its own Lottie file. And so that's ready to go. I went and did that work prior to the demo, so we don't need to go copy and paste all that stuff in there. But here's the code that looks for it. Uh, go get my Lottie tags. I'm just going to get the first tag in this case because it's a simple case. Go get the one that's called Lottie, and if that's the case, compose a URL from it, And then I'm going to call site state properties. Properties is a dynamic. And so I can just dot whatever I want to on there. And then that's going to fire I notify property change for anybody who's looking at site state dot properties. So Inc is doing its part. It is going to set that URL. And now we have to go back over to the Lottie, and we have to modify our Lottie to be listening for this stuff. So, sorry, I'm just on the other screen here for a second, grabbing my stuff, grabbing a line of code. Here it is. So I notify property change. If I don't already have it referenced, I need to reference component model, very basic stuff. And then what I need to do is I need to have a handler for it. I'm going to call it handle property change. Old school events, right? Plus equals event handler. Here's my handler. It's coming in, and this is going to get fired every time site state properties changes. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to inspect and see what was the property name that changed. I'm only interested in Lottie. There could be other modules making different property changes. I'm going to ignore all of those. And I have special knowledge. I know that if somebody changes a property name called Lottie, it's a URL. So go grab the value of it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend for a second that in a perfect world, all I would have to do is change my URL. Oh, change my Lottie. And if I change my Lottie here, remember we're in the Lottie component. And if I change the source, it should just magically work, right? Like I could just change this and hit state has changed, but you can tell from my voice that this isn't going to work. But this is kind of like the concept, right? We'd like to just be able to hook into this and make it go. One thing we can do is we can just put a breakpoint right here just to watch that plumbing in action, just to see when I make a change to the ink that the Lottie is responding to it. I'm at a crossroads, take the left path, and boom, there I did. I hit my breakpoint, and the Lottie that it's trying to do is indeed a URL that seems reasonable. So we know that that communication's happening. That's super handy. But you'll also notice that nothing's happening here. This really isn't changing. It's because this is a web component and it's not a Blazor component. And so we're going to have to do a little bit of JS interop to make this guy work. If we go back and we look at our this code for the Lottie, you can tell here we've already used this guidance that tells us this is how the player works. And if we look a little bit closer, we can see these attributes. These are all the attributes that exist, and we're using some of them: source, loop, some of these attributes we're using. We kind of ignore these other ones. We could change the background color, stuff like that. But the really interesting part here is that there is a property hanging off of the web component that is an instance of .lottie. Uh, and so what's handy about this is it's the hook into the .lottie implementation. It's all there's JavaScript behind the scenes making this happen. It allows you to call methods, listen for events, more control over the animation. If we dive deeper into the .lottie uh, implementation, we can see that it's got a method called load, and it doesn't have a good example here, but this is the method that we're going to call, and we're going to call that with JS interop. So in our Lottie, let me grab some different, slightly different code here. We're going to say that we're going to grab a local string that's the URL, and that's the message that was sent to us. We don't need to worry about any state has changed because we're in JavaScript at this time. And what we're going to do is we're going to use JS runtime, and we're going to invoke a piece of custom code that we're going to include on the page called update Lottie, and we're going to pass the URL to it. And I'm going to do a big no right here. This works for the demo, but this isn't actually how you would register a script in Octane. You would register this script similar to how we did it in the similar to how we did this, but to do a custom one would require a little bit more work, and I didn't want to talk about that part. So just know this code would kind of live, it would live somewhere else in Octane. It would live on an Octane server project, but this is going to be okay for our demo. So I'm creating a update Lottie function, and then what it's going to do is it's going to look for that. It's going to look for our control right here, and then I know that this control has a .lottie hanging off of it because that's the piece of investigation work that we did looking at the documentation. And I'm going to call the load method, and then I'm going to pass in basically I'm going to redo what I would do on this initial markup, but I'm going to do it by passing it to the load event. I'm going to pass in an object that has loop true, autoplay true, and the source is the new URL. Now, if I do this, I think that's I think that's pretty much everything I need to do. Let's see if it works. Here we go. Drum roll, please. You find yourself at a crossroads in the forest. Take the left path. Ta-da! Look at that serene lake. The water's crystal clear. Would we like to stop by? Sure, let's sit, let's relax by the lake. That's the end of our story. And so, yeah, in conclusion, we're using some interesting technologies here. We've got we're using ink. We pulled this in as a submodule from a repo that's published by the Inkle folks. Uh, we're able to we made two modules, and these modules are low code or no code modules. We can publish these modules; anybody could use them. And when you go into the settings, go into your module settings, you can just plop in ink right here, or have somebody generate it, and yeah, you get this like rich interactive experience. One of the big reasons we do this, uh, we like using Octane for our e-learning, is that, oh yeah, what's down the right path? Uh, the right path. Oh, there's a cabin. We can either walk past the cabin or go into it. if we go into the cabin, there's a stack of books. So sorry, I interrupted myself. The reason that we use this at a e-learning company is we're empowering um, our instructional designers to write the ink, pick the pick the images and animations, and they can assemble large swaths of the learning experiences themselves. And then they don't have to run everything through the engineering department. They can use Octane, they can create pages, they can put modules on pages. And so we're sharing the app construction adventure with them, and it makes engineering, we're no longer the bottleneck that everything has to go through engineering to get published and built and stuff like that. And it's really led to us being able to work on more projects in parallel and get a lot more people working on the project or contributing to the project. Where's my, I feel like I left my, ah, sorry. All right. So we wrapped it up. We triggered some events coming from our tags. We added all, we did all this stuff. Thanks for your time. I'm gonna uh, I've got links to all of this stuff, including the presentation with all the links to everything we talked about. If you're interested, you can follow along with my wacky adventures on my blog. You can find me on social media. And there's also a link to the Octane Discord. I hang out there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm opening it up for questions. I've got a screen over here that has some in it, but maybe if we can get Sean back on.
Here I am.
Hi, Sean.
That was really good. Actually, so I didn't really know. Well, I sort of had an idea of what you were going to present, but I think it's great how you showed a very practical example of how you would use Octane, Blazor, and then a bunch of JavaScript libraries, which this is like a recurring theme throughout all the previous presentations, and you kind of brought it all together at the end. So that was perfect.
Well, I'm glad it worked out. We didn't really plan it that way. I'm glad to hear that the animations were looking pretty fine. Did we have any questions in the feed? We're kind of close on time, but
Yeah, I don't see any questions. Just a lot of people liked the demo.
oh, nice. Well, I'm glad. Yeah, I was hoping to do a little something that wasn't as nerdy and a little bit more, you know, pulling in some different pieces of why it makes so much sense to be using Octane for the stuff that we're doing. And it really has been, it's saved us a ton of time along the way. So I hope
Yeah,
other
no,
people,
I
yeah,
appreciate that you were like an early adopter and kind of been along for the journey. And it's
yeah,
always great to have the feedback based on a lot of like I would have never imagined someone creating a storytelling app, right? Like with Octane. So the use cases are always the most interesting about what people do with open source projects.
yeah. Oh, I see a question here. How long have I been working in .NET? I've been working in .NET as long as .NET's been around. So I think 2003 was when I
Or,
switched over to .NET. 2005 at least. Anyway, whenever it came out. So I guess that would be what, 20 years.
yeah, a couple decades.
Yeah. Well, thanks
Yeah.
everybody for all the positive stuff, and thank you, Sean, for inviting me to the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it was great. I really appreciate you participating. I think it was a great demo.